Okay, welcome everybody to tonight's call. I think I'm starting here alone, actually. It is Wednesday, March 19th of 2025, and this is the Profitable Real Estate Agent Plan. And this is our final week in this rotation. So if this is new to you or you're joining for the first time, this is a 12-week rotation through a strategic plan. And I think this time I'm definitely going to do some tweaking to the plan over the next 2 weeks because I am going to really break this down into strategic sections so you understand, for example, the model that's staring in front of me on the wall. I really want to make sure we understand strategic leadership vision. That's the self vision. We talk about that in week 1, where we talk about bulletproofing your self image as a profitable real estate agent. Then we talk about strategic business vision, where we get into some of the financial goal setting, strategic marketing. That includes unique selling propositions and why should they do business with you, and avatar, defining who that is. And then, of course, everybody's favorite subject by default is leads and where they are. I'm going to move the content marketing around a little bit. I think I'm going to move that back up towards where we talk about the unique selling proposition. Why? Because the unique selling propositions that I talk about all the time are an information marketing product, and it actually leads with content. So I'll talk about the development of core content next time, a little bit earlier in this course, because it goes more hand in hand with the marketing beginning. Because by the time you get to leads and you're trying to make your case through scripts, which we talk about at week 7, that's the language of actually articulating what is unique about this package of information and then how you're going to organize that for people. But near and dear to my heart after all of that, and I talk about this every week with my one-on-one coaching clients who are all top producers from all over Canada and the United States, from coast to coast. They all have the same problem that I had early on in my career, which was not just creating a prospect, but actually taking care of it, not losing it. People that get good at creating business do it at such a high speed that they often can't get themselves to the point where they're able to babysit their prospects that they've already made. And they're always trying to look for the next deal when they have a whole bunch of them right in their hands. So more and more and more, I will lean in on the conversation of not just how to properly start moving leads into prospect, but then maintaining that relationship. That actually has a lot to do with content, which is why I had content kind of mixed in here, but I'm seeing the value in articulating that earlier and really doing much more to say how you start with content in its true form and its true proper form. Now, I'm not talking about getting on TikTok and doing a video. I'm talking about actually creating business content, market updates, pictures and details of properties that sold in a buyer's price range or sold around a seller, the buyer plan, the seller plan. Those are things that literally together as a content package changed my life. It changed my personal life in this business, and it changed the way that I coach people. And all that has to do with prospecting too. So the way that you start turning a lead into a prospect is through this content, and then really protecting yourself, getting them. Oh, yep. Can you not hear me? Can you guys not hear me? Oh, hang on. Geez, sorry. Yeah, I'm here, buddy. I was rolling along here and I was recording on YouTube, but I was not recording on Zoom. So I'm glad you said something, because otherwise you wouldn't have heard me at all tonight. So let me just go back through this narrative again for the people on Zoom. I was just going through the plan quickly and letting everybody know that we have arrived at the end of the road tonight on section 12 here. And I can't emphasize enough how this is really a strategic plan. You might not be able to see it so well if I hold this up here, but that is the strategic plan that led to this course. So I want to really start to intermingle those two things. And I think at the beginning of the course next time, I'll give a copy of that strategic plan and I'll incorporate it into this. But there are strategies to a better mindset. There are strategies to a better financial business planning. There are definitely strategies around marketing when it comes to unique selling propositions and avatars, and all before you ever get to any kind of lead decision, right? And what I was saying about this course tonight is that I want to take the content marketing and I want to move that more towards the beginning of marketing, because what I'm realizing is this is a little bit misplaced to help you all understand the role that content actually plays in marketing. Because we've drifted off into too much of the platform stuff like social media. I certainly will relate it to that, but it's much more about content marketing than it is social media. And I need to unplug those things. They're too conjoined, and people get very confused that they're supposed to be these TikTok or Instagram stars. And without the right content on there, you're really talking to yourself. It's an ego, play versus an actual real content place where people can vet you. So I'm going to move that around next time. And then that way it'll make more sense by the time we get into scripting. But what I was really just saying before I realized I wasn't being heard was the prospecting and protecting of prospecting is probably one of the most singular important pieces of conversion. And I can tell you, because a lot of this falls into what I term the conversion module. So we get all the way up to the marketing and we're ready, but as we bridge that gap between scripts and creating a prospect, we're really into conversion, right? So we've gone from leads and what to say to them, but we really have to get into the creation and consistent creation of prospects along the way and babysitting them. What I was saying before is I have so many top producers that I coach, and this is the pandemic for top producers. They are always trying to skim the cream off the lead pile, meaning who's today, and they're missing all these good prospect conversations they had, but just because that person wasn't ready in the next 30 to 60 days maximum, they forget them. And I can't tell you how many times I have helped a top producer find in their already existing database an enormous amount of unturned business. And it happens in that prospect tranche. Now, of course, after all that work, caring for sellers and buyers is really important. I might actually look to combine that conversation right there and look to see if we really need 12 weeks or if I'm missing something else that I think needs to be in their place, because caring for clients is really what that subject is. And so I'm going to make a little change there. Closing is a business all in and of itself, and we have to deal with it, which leads us to tonight. I don't know why it says your. We'll fix that. But past clients are definitely the asset that we're trying to create. So as we land on tonight's lecture, it's really important to understand we are not trying to create, if we're thinking strategically, just a commission check. And that's the way we all think, which is a very tactical outcome. But a strategic outcome is to create a happy past client. Here we call them happy griffins, so that we actually remember what we're trying to produce at the end of an assembly line. So it's very similar to, back in the day, Henry Ford creating the Model T, and that was the creation. Of course, they got paid for it, but they had to spend money to create it, get money to sell it, and hopefully it was profitable. But really, if you wanted people to repeat and refer, you needed to produce a good product, a client who technically in the car business was a past client too. And hopefully that whole concept of that car continues to ingratiate them to the Ford Motor Company so that they're likely to refer their friends to buy a Model T and repeat when theirs breaks down. And that's the mentality that I have approached a strategic plan with, is to see it as an assembly line, just like a manufacturing business, to make sure we're understanding we are manufacturing a happy past client. There is certainly a lot to go on in between that, but that's what you're trying to create. And then it's critically important you understand how to stay in touch with them. Now, I will tell you, if you're new, come right out of the box thinking this way. If you've been in the business before, it's critical to clean up your database very quickly with your past client information so that you continue to be in touch with them. And that's why we're going to go into this final thing here. So let me just share the right tab, and we're going to go into this happy past client, and I'm going to start the lecture. Now, remember, what happens on these calls is I have to go through this lecture portion first. Then I open it up for Q&A about this subject and, of course, anything else. I will remind you all, I take a 2-week hiatus, he said, in between this. So there'll be 2 weeks off, and then we will resume. And that will give me a little bit more time to shore up the Profitable Real Estate Agent Plan curriculum. But for those of you that are in here, I'm going to do 2 things right now. One, let me see where it was. It was over here. Sorry, I'm talking to myself. I'm going to share with you the link in the Zoom chat. Okay, so those of you that are in the Zoom chat, I'm going to share the link with you so that you have it. And so you can grab that, and that's the curriculum. And then what you can do also, in addition to that, you grab the Zoom chat, you're going to grab also the recordings. So while we have a week off, if you missed something, there are some missing videos. I think there was a couple where I was away and then one didn't take, but there are some of these weeks that are recorded. So I will, oops, let me see why that's not coming up that way. Bear with me. I have to go into this with, let me see, I should be able to share it this way. Yep. Okay, so this is a list of the recordings, which we will be putting up there. So we'll put tonight's up there as well once this is done. So there are some missing. I apologize for that, but there are some recordings here, and you should go back using the curriculum and listen to some of this stuff. It really, building a strategic mindset is really about repetition. And I cannot more highly recommend that you do that, because it's really, really critical to understand. Look I'm sitting here. I'm a top producer. I have sold $73.5 million worth of property while spending 2 days completely coaching. The other days filled with some coaching stuff. And I still sold that much property. But yet there's like 3 of you in here tonight, right? So what does that tell you? It tells you how few people actually take the time to actually work on their business. I get it if somebody is, out there and they're going through what they do because they have a day job. I understand that. But there's such a huge opportunity for those of us that actually show up and work. I can't emphasize enough. It's stunning to me how few people will actually dedicate time to building a real estate agent business. And it's an unfair fight when I arm you. Annabelle, who sits behind me during the day, she's had COVID recently, but she came to so many of these things along the way. She has sold at 23 years old, $1.7 million buyer. She's just picked up another listing that was a FSBO. I don't know how much that is. My guess is $1 million. She's running around with a $2 million buyer that she learned how to pick up from my open houses, meaning sitting in my listings and doing that. So there's no someday. It's actually today. And today, for those people that actually work on this business, you're just not going to have any competition doing things strategically. So I promise you, especially if you're young, people are just hiding behind cell phones, text messages, emails. Nobody's learning how to talk face to face with people. It's just staggering amounts of opportunity because of that. So I really, really emphasize, you really want to make sure that you're here, you're listening to these things over and over and over again, because I make money doing this. I can't make that up. I am not just some theorist sitting here telling you what to do and hoping it works like a lot of these coaches that are out there. I do this, and this is my give back night. And it's just stunning to me how few people will come live to coaching calls, right? So that's your advantage if you're here or if you're listening to the replay. So there's my rant. Let's get going. Okay, so how you close is how you grow. This is very, very important to understand that if you want to build a sustainable, right, a sustainable business, then you want to be understanding that concept of happy past clients. It's really important that you're creating them, right? So to that end, developing an answer to, are you closing with care? Even if you haven't closed a deal yet, that's not the point. Remember, in the beginning of this course, we talk about acting as if you are already there if you're new. And if you've been in the business before and it didn't go your way, acting as if you are a strategic player all over again, reinventing that, right? So let's get into some of these details. I'm going to attach this to the strategic closing module, which we talked about last week. So the question is, why is it important to be strategic during the closing process? Okay. Well, a strategic approach allows you to care for your client at the highest level during the closing process, because that's when they are the most anxious. So going back to that, and we have this, sometimes it's as short as 2 weeks, right? I mean, a week is pretty quick unless it's vacant and you have really good title company or attorneys. 2 weeks is probably the shortest closing that you'll see. And then you can be all the way up to a long time, but pretty standard would be 30 would be quick and 45 days. If there's a mortgage, in that range, 30 to 45 days. Why? Because the mortgage process can take some time with appraisals and underwriting and getting documents back and forth. You might have a slow mortgage broker, bank, or whatever it might be. So that closing process is a very harried experience. It's easy to have very high levels of anxiety during that because there's a lot of money that's being transacted. There's a lot of T's being crossed and I's being dotted. So there's a lot of pressure on time. So these people, buyers and sellers going through that, everything just got real and there's no escaping from it, right? So it's a very anxious period. So you really, really want to care for those people in the closing process there, right? So what do you need to focus on when organizing the closing process yourself? Hang on one second. Is this the whole? Let me just see this. My bad. I am reviewing it. And that's the whole thing. So let me go to the slideshow instead. I need to share this. So that was, and that should lead us to, hang on. Bear with me, a little discombobulated here today. Okay, there we go. So that leads you into somebody who's gone through that closing process in detail and leads you into this past client section, right? So it is really important to see the closing process as a complete strategic plan itself. Look, conversion is where you'll do the most business, right? Bringing a lead into prospect and then into client, that's where most of the details and learning how to be strategic will fall. But the closing process is such a condensed thing that has so much detail in and of itself. It's just that we took all of the detail that would be relevant in a conversion process and we squeezed the accordion of time down. So you can imagine, like when somebody's slowly going through the prospect phase, then they become a client. They, all those accordions of time are stretched out, and then it goes boom, just like that. So there's this gear shift into high speed, and a lot of people get flat-footed. And the non-strategic agent also gets flat-footed, panics, and you can lose a lot of deals. Now, if you pay very close attention to those people during the closing process, then all of a sudden they're going to be birthed into a better process as a family member, right? And that's the standard for what we're trying to do. We're trying to get people that we treat, like family, right? So as we go through this workshop, think of that key point there is, are you really treating these people like family? And I can tell you what it's like when you have a past client from today that really appreciates you. We have become family. I'm telling you, like I literally was with this gal, Katie. I had met them at an open house, by the way, given them a buyer package of information. They found it to be so professional that they actually reached out to me and asked if I was taking on buyer clients. They asked me that, and that's happened to me multiple times. Are you taking on buyer clients? Because we'd like to work with you. They asked me. And so I said, of course. Now, I do business in two separate places that are an hour and 15 minutes apart. Cape Cod is the beach. Boston is obviously the city. Now, these folks went back and forth on both places, and I could tell they were probably trying to now gear shift towards Boston where they both worked, and I could tell they were trying to start a family. And so literally we went through this, we made an offer in a place and it didn't work out because the person we just withdrew themselves from the marketplace after we made a full price offer. So crazy situation. And all of a sudden here we were looking for the Cape place now. They're obviously well-heeled. They can afford two places, very luxury couple, very power, young couple with inherited wealth on top of that. So they can afford to do these things. And all of a sudden, she gets out of the car with a 13-month-old baby. And I'm telling you, it was like old home week. I was with this person in an intimate, part of her life, walking down a street on a summer day, looking for the primary residence. And it's just not that long ago, right? So it's about 14 months ago. And the time just goes by so stunningly fast. But the connection is so deep and so powerful that I am their go-to, right? I'm their go-to. And that's because we feel like family. And that just happened today. And this is what I'm trying to tell you. I don't make this up. I'm giving you real anecdotes every time I can. That's today, where repeat business. And by the way, this is a 2.75 and I sold them a 2.5, right? So we're not talking about small potatoes here either. So when I'm strategic with this type of thing, not only did I win it because I was strategically ready with a buyer package at an open house running that whole formula, I also had the prospect follow-up where I actually started when she became a client to act as if it was me to save her the time. So you talk about treating somebody like family. I was like the big brother that was going out for these two, and I was previewing these properties and said, yes, you have to come see this one. And we did that back to back. So after months of her trying to do it, I took over like a big brother, and we had a property we really made two offers within about a week and a half, and it just condensed everything down and it was done. And then they had the baby and they're ecstatic about where they live and on it goes, right? So that's how setting that person up created this. That's a real example before I get there. So what were the critical thinking points I had? Well, again, this is the slide I thought I had. But how does your closing process set you up for success or failure? Well, it's critical to remember that if you abdicate your responsibility for closing your client, you may be neglecting them and creating ill will no matter how well you performed prior to that. Okay. So I was always good as a transactional agent at finding somebody what they wanted. In this case, let's stay with the buyer. So the buyers have to do a lot of running around with you. And I was very good at hunting for the property. I would be very aggressive. Like I just said, I've done that for years where I would be out proactively looking at the properties and calling them, telling them what I thought. Gosh, I wish, way back when 25 years ago, you could FaceTime people and you had the video capabilities you do today. But that's what I would do. And I would have that really good experience in conversion from client to under agreement. So as they bridge the gap from client, I would pass them off to my closing coordinator. And I am telling you, when I look back, I don't think I realized I was doing it, but I was abdicating responsibility in total to my closing coordinator, Janice, who was very good with people. She was funny and people liked her, but they were in some cases mad at me. Oh, it's sort of like you just got us under agreement and then you dumped us on somebody else. Where did you go? Because they get so emotionally attached to you during this process that they want to know at least you're still there. So what I realized is that once you close with care, what's the most critical component of good past client follow-up too? Well, I started to think, okay, what's happening here? Well, it's critical to make your past client follow-up intentional and systematic. So you can't abandon somebody during closing. You have to stay emotionally involved with them, right? And I talk about that in the closing module separately, but they meld into each other because what you'll find is that if I can stay in the emotional part of closing, hey, how you doing? I know you're with Chelsea. She's crossing the T's, dotting the I's, and client care now helps me too. Laura does a very good job. We both keep a toe in looking at the person, making sure they're okay. Right. And so then from there, what happens is you get to that point where you're going kind of through this and you're figuring out, okay, I need to really make sure this person knows that I care. Right. So I would just touch base and say, listen, I don't like to get in the way of the closing coordinator, the attorneys, but I'm right here. How you doing? So I would just check in emotionally. That's all I would have to do. I could still not abdicate, it's such a negative word, but I could trust the closing coordinator to do the majority of the job, but I'm still going to watch the closing coordinator and make sure they're on too. So I really got better at understanding my role during the closing module so that when we close, when we close it up past client wise, we could start to become intentional and systematic, right? That's what happened. So now, what's the best way to maintain your relationship with past clients in a professional manner? Well, this is where you start to say, well, what do I do? See, I think what I found is in the past client module, we really have, the issue with, the issue is really, okay, do we have a situation where we're really like, I don't know, what's the best way to say this? Are we being professional with them when we follow up? Because a lot of people would say to me, well, what do I call them up and say? Well, that goes all the way back to what I was talking about of content earlier. We start off with people by showing them we know the market, that we're organized in the market, okay? We know that. So that's what I'm trying to say is that if we start off by being professional and then it closes, why do we stop being professional? Why is it always like I'm going to have a pop by, the Brian Buffini pop by, and just do what? Give you gifts and stuff like that? Yes, it will work because you show up there, but it's very relational. There's nothing systematic about it, and there's nothing really truly professionalized about it in the context of real estate. It's very personal. I'm not saying it doesn't work because nothing is nothing. Something works because in lieu of nobody else doing it, you're doing something. But I thought to myself, we start professionally, so maybe we just stay that way and stay in that mode with them. Because I thought to myself, like, what if you're a wealth manager? Somebody gives you $1 million to manage for them, right? And And what do? Well, you send them a statement consistently, even though they've basically abdicated control of it. If you give them a statement of how they're doing, they might never need you again until they want to make a trade or they want to put more money in. So why don't we think like that? Instead of Popeyes and here's a pumpkin and all these things that are nice, what about professionally doing a local market conditions update on a regular basis to maintain the very professional, positioning that I'm teaching you to have from the start? See, this all is the unique selling proposition, right? If you go back to the beginning of looking at one of these packages of information, right? This is the seller package, mailer, and presentation package. We start off in here by having a component of this that is the professional market update, right? Which looks like this. It's a simple one pager. It has all the statistical information. As part of our original package to them, we gave them this. Now, of course, they're not going to really necessarily be worried about what sells around them. It might be interesting. They're not necessarily going to need another seller plan anytime soon, but they are always curious about how's the market. I mean, I'm contented in the house you sold me. I don't have a plan to move anytime soon, but nice to hear from you. How's the market? So instead of waiting for them to ask us when they see us, I just decided we should be proactive. So that content evolution for me, it was that one pager that became the thing that we needed, right? That's what it was. So we went through there and we gave that to them and off they went, right? So that's how we started to say, all right, let's keep sending that. Now, again, it's the Goldilocks formula. I'm not going to sit there and just give them this every month because it's not as relevant. So what I decided to do was say, you know what? I'm going to give a quarterly report. That's what a lot of, major companies, well, not a lot, all major companies that are publicly traded companies, they give a quarterly report. It's called a 10Q, right? And then there's a 10K, that's the annual report. I said, why don't we just report to them on the market like that, right? It's not necessarily if they want an analysis of their house, we can have that as the upsell. Hey, listen, if you're curious for tax purposes or whatever else, what the current market value of your house is, please let us know and we'll give you a quick analysis too. So that can be the upsell. But in the meantime, I figured let's be proactive because everything with me is proactive beat first. Give a gift of information, right? So proactive gift of information. So in this case, we can just stay with the same content we gave them in the beginning, and we could just email it to them and mail it to them. I started with physical. Everything with me, when I reinvented and built this systematic way, starts with physical. We don't want to be like everybody else and be lazy and just digitally send to something and end up in the spam file and not get consumed. It's very important that you try to get people to consume your information physically. You can support it digitally too. So yes, of course. And by the way, at the end of this, I'll open up the mind map for the past client formula that I use. So you can take a screenshot of it. It's stunningly simple, like stunningly. But that core piece of content in the market update leads the way, right? So what's the best way to maintain your relationship with your past clients in a personal manner? So see what I did? I didn't throw the personal manner out and disparage another coaching program to say, oh, that's too touchy-feely, because that does work. But you're losing ground with somebody if you don't maintain a professional standing. Because when you get referred by somebody, you don't want to just do it personally. You want to be referred professionally. Let that sink in. Certainly you want them to like you, and that's where we get into the second beat with personal, but you want these people to refer you professionally. This is my guy. This is my gal. They are super professional. They have a system. I'm sure they could help you. That's the kind of thing that you want somebody to say about you. So by sending that market update, it will harken back to the good professional experience they had. But we do want to stay personally there too as another layer. So let me just go back and summarize as to where I'm at. The first thing I learned about past clients is once they became a past client was to be intentional and systematic with my follow-up. So the first thing I said is I'm intentionally going to send every past client in the mail every quarter, a quarterly market update, and at the end of the year, the annual market update. And it's going to go to them physically and be in their mailbox so it gets into their house. They see my face, they see the data, and even if they just throw it away every quarter, fine, you saw me, okay? Then layering in the personal what we decided to do was do what? Well, everybody's about birthdays and holidays, but wait a minute. We have a very personal moment around what? Around their sale date. So they actually have a happy property anniversary moment with us on a yearly basis. And then we can call them on the tail of that delivery to continuously express this echo of gratitude, because we are. So when you have a gift-giving mentality in your business and you have this professional moment in time, that's the thing to celebrate first. Again, I think Paul Cantu, my partner out in Seattle, does a great job on a personal basis, sending more personal things. But I hope not until there's the market update that is arriving to them, which it is, by the way, and then a happy property anniversary gift, right around the time that you did this deal together, right? And reminding them of that nice moment and keeping that footprint. It only takes one a year. You're not going to be on them all the time. If you want to send holiday cards or whatever in addition to that, that's like having a hot fudge sundae, right? The ice cream is the market update. The hot fudge is the gift, happy property anniversary. And then if you want nuts and sprinkles and cherries, you can do all that stuff too. But you got to work from the base up in a professional context. So even the personal side of it is inside the professional context of the relationship. Hey guys, happy property anniversary. Because you have had, and especially if you're dealing more with the primary owner, you're in a much better place, right? That's where you're at. You're in a much better place with that person. Okay. So those are the things that we did 1, 2. Now we've got 2 beats that can last. And remember, that now becomes what? 5 touches in a year on a past client. Okay. Now you could have 5 excuses to call and say, hey, it's me, just want to make sure you saw the market update. But that can get a little much for a past client too, because look, everybody knows that you want them to refer, right? But what I would say is just start with, if you have a lot of them, like I do, just start with 1 happy property anniversary call and then just keep the market update going. And by the way, if you remind me too, I'll go into my email and I'll show you these market updates being sent. Okay. So now we got 2 gifts. What's the proper way to ask for referrals without ruining the relationship? When you call them on the property anniversary date. So you send the gift a little bit before their closing date. And what's the property anniversary date? Their closing date, right? So about a week before that, we send out a little box of chocolates. We did automate it and it broke on us. So we didn't even know it was going. So we're like, oh no. So now we've been making up for a lot of this. We went more to a manual process with a local candy shop and they send these things out and it's been great, right? Because now we know these things are getting delivered. So what's the proper way to ask for these referrals? Well, when you call them on the property anniversary date, ask if any of their friends or family or neighbors are thinking about selling or buying, so you can send the gift of the plan to those people, right? That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to send the plan to those people, buyer or seller, right? Whatever it is. Then lastly, you can ask them if they have any plans of moving again or buying another property, right? And just be savvy about that. How's the house? You guys good there? Everything's good there? No intention to move, right? And you need to buy another property? Don't forget, we can go through this whole process again. Keep it light. Are you going to sell again? Are you going to? Don't do that to people. It is disgusting, really disgusting. And prospects pursued run away, but past clients get turned off, and then you become that person that they don't want to refer, right? So again, market update, quarterly, mailed, property anniversary gift once a year. Call them on the back of that, make sure everything's good, then ask if any of their friends, family, or neighbors are thinking about making a move, because you would love to send a gift of information that includes pictures and details of properties, 1-page statistical market update like they're getting, and the buyer or seller plan depending on what it is. Remind them of what you would be giving to their friends, family, or neighbors, and wink, wink also to them if they need a copy of it, right? So all of that stuff becomes very systematic and intentional, okay? Now, one thing that I would say is that before I get into the pro tip here, is as you're going through this gift giving process, yes, you can put some digital touches in here. Okay. So what we did was we said, okay, they're getting this static thing in the mail once a quarter, but they might want to hear from me, see me talking. So we decided to say, in addition to the 4 touches physically in the mailbox, let's use another medium to make sure they're seeing that too. And let's send this digital market update. But instead of just making it the static same thing they get in the mail, let me read a script onto the screen here, right? And let's put that in an email along with a couple of blog pieces that we wrote about, and along with a couple of featured properties, and then a couple calls to action for the plans. Thinking about buying, selling, or becoming an agent, get one of our plans, right? So now you can add touches in. So we went from 4 + 1, 5 physical touches to adding 12. Now we have 17 touches in a year without being a pest. And not everybody's going to consume the digital. Like I said, it ends up in spam. They don't see it. They, opt out of it, whatever might be the case. But that's how you go through this, right? So it's also important to realize that asking for and receiving referrals from your past clients requires a very different framework from asking other professionals for referrals. Okay. That's a very different thing too. You hear all of this about referrals from what? Oh, I'm by referral only. What do you mean referral? But like, you mean from your past clients who might refer you a friend or who might repeat, right? That's a whole different deal from saying, I'm going to target probate attorneys. I'm going to target, closing attorneys. I'm going to target that type of professional, home inspectors, whatever. I'm going to target these people and ask them for referrals by saying, if any of your clients are thinking about selling, I'm happy to give them a package of information on your behalf. Say that you recommended that they get this, right? And have some kind of reciprocal framework to work with them. That's a very, very different thing to accelerate your business. But of course, creating happy past clients who are likely to refer and repeat is everything, right? Okie dokie. So there we go with that. Let's get to the, let's stop sharing these screens. And what we'll do is we'll jump into a little Q&A here. And remember, on these calls, I will answer anything about this or any of the other course materials that we've gone through. So feel free. And again, if you get a little shy here, no big deal. Just shoot something to me in the chat and we can go from there. Jackie, how about you? Anything for me tonight? Good. Awesome. Yeah, awesome. Wonderful. Yeah, sorry, there's a couple dead ends in there. What I would say, Jackie, you want to, the most important things is, let me see how I have them up there. I'm going to take a look while I'm talking to you. Yeah, I would say if January 8th, 15th, and 22 are the first 3, I can't more highly recommend going to those 3 first, so that when I begin in a couple weeks, you really hit that ground running, and it just really deepens your understanding, right? Those first 3 are important because that would be, let me bring this back up here. I will show my screen again. Let me see. I'm going to share the screen again because I'll keep this open while we're talking here. Let me get into this. Yeah. So Jackie, those things right there, see it's mine. Hang on a second. I'm not showing my screen. I just want to show it to you. So I set that up for you. So here, Jackie, see, mindset is everything, right? And we got into the scripting and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, she was a 10 and I got a package and you were all excited. So really understanding how to use the bag of tools to manipulate your own mind, to see yourself acting as if. I talk about that there. I also talk about the DISC personality profile, right? Which is, I think, I'm going to put that in here too. We have let me just see if I have it. Yeah, here it is. Somebody gave me this. I don't know if this is, free DISC test. Okay, so here, I'm going to put this in there, Jackie, because taking a DISC test in advance of getting into the head stuff, I actually recommend it there. So it's really important to, to go there and take a disc test. If anybody's on here and has never taken a disc test, it's the personality test. So you can take an inventory of who you are. I see you, Nigel, so feel free to jump in too. That disc personality profile test was written by Dr. Marstens. Yeah. And he actually devised the lie detector test. So it's incredible. I think he's got 28 questions in there that you choose an adjective to describe yourself, and it will tell you whether you're dominant, influential, steady, or compliant. Very powerful stuff, because once you understand that, and then you understand mindset tools, you realize, okay, I'm dominant, and I better calm down when I'm talking to an S or C. Okay, I'm dominant and have no patience for being strategic in my business. I better get over that. So it really gives you a good inventory of yourself so that you can work on parts of yourself that aren't natural strengths to run a better business and adapt to what's happening in front of you with a prospect, because you can't treat them all the same. Go ahead, Nigel. What do you got for me, pal? Good. Sure. Yeah, yeah. Tell me how you come to be at this group. So, if are you part of one of our groups already, or did you just drop in? Excellent. That's right. That's what I thought, Nigel. So, welcome, by the way. We're thrilled to have you. So, interestingly enough, there is a video, okay, that I will give you. There's a video on how to get started. There's a 17-minute video. Bear with me while I dig it out for you, okay? Because this is the thing that I want you to start with, okay? Because there's a 17-minute video in this thing I'm going to give you. And I think you're all Griffin agents in here tonight, aren't you? Or TRCers? Yeah. So let me just see. I can share it with you all then. Bear with me, buddy. Good question. Because this is a skill set that if you learn this, bud, there'll be nobody competing with you quantitatively. Nobody. So it is correct, Matt. That is correct. Yep. So let me give you guys that. That, Nigel, right there, what I just posted. Okay. Grab that link. All right. So, yep, watch that. The net sheet's in there too. I mean, Paul has one adapted for Cantu Group, but you'll get it. Okay. And that's start right in there, and then come to me with questions about that, and I can fill in the blanks. But that's the core training for it. You'll yeah. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting that you asked that. That's actually very that's high level copy, direct mail stuff, right? That's direct mail marketing, gimmicky stuff that's effective. It's called lumpy mail. So if you make like a little tchotchke, whatever, I would make it like some house oriented thing. Make a 3D printer of a house keychain. You know what I mean? Something like that, something cool like that would be, make it generic, whatever, or you can make it branded to yourself. So that's a lumpy mail. So what that would do is you would have the expired package going out like this, that looks like this, but it would be lumpy because it'd be something in there. So hand addressed lumpy mail has a very high probability of getting opened. Just don't get too gimmicky, right? Don't get too gimmicky, because the power of the messaging and the gift of this information is what they need. But to get lumpy mail, it's a direct mail technique. That's actually a real technique to get something open. Hand addressed, lumpy mail, real stamps. Those are all direct mail techniques to have something feel more personalized. And when something like this size too, Nigel, comes in the mail, it's going to outsize most of the things they got, right? So when they see this personal thing, it's likely to get, open. Now, of course, when they open it, you want your benevolent little Trojan horse on top explaining this is your army. Your copywritten letter, which comes right off of the cover letters, is designed. So I'll give you those too. Okay. So let's get it. Yeah, I'm going to put those cover letters in here right now so you don't have to hunt and peck. You and Matt. Let's get those to you. So you see what the cover letters look like in their latest form. So here they are coming now. Sorry, I have to toggle. There are the cover letters right there. Okay. Now those are copywritten, and there's copywritten techniques. Now, what that's called, when you see things that are copywritten, okay, what you're going to see me have a title. It says enclosed. Leave it alone. Don't touch that. That has to stay there, right? And then if you roll back in your chair, Nigel, and you look at that cover letter, you'll see you can skim it and understand it. That's called a dual path of readership. The skimmer can understand it. They'll read the enclosure, they'll go straight to the PS, and they'll skim everything that's bold and underlined. So it should be almost readable and make sense if I skim it. Okay. That's another direct mail concept. So we want to make sure that when we stuff these envelopes, if it's something like this, right, where it's going to be opened on this side where, we have the little metal latch here, opening it, I want that letter on top like that. So it opens up and they see the letter first, right? Good questions. What else do we have tonight? I do. Yep. 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 Uh, yeah. Probably not. Depending on what it would cost, because the cost of finishing a basement is more expensive. Is more expensive than it sounds, right? So, so I would say, to what level were those basements finished? Were those walkout levels, or were they all lower level? There's a lot of moving parts there. So, I mean, what I'm asking you though is on the seller qualifying questionnaire, which hopefully you use to ask people questions before you go in. One of those questions would 100% be about, what do they think the property is worth, right? So if they're looking for nosebleed numbers, compared to something that has twice the square footage finished, right? Because it's interesting that it would be twice the price, because typically that's not what a finished basement does, unless of course there are double the bedrooms and it lives like a duplex. Whether they were done legally, were those finished basements done legally, do you think? Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah, so they're not even in the same neighborhoods. So no, I would definitely not be finishing a basement thinking I could get what was in a better neighborhood. Why do you think then this is so, like, I mean, again, it's subterranean level stuff, right? It's not walkout basement, or is it? Okay. Yeah. Then why are you only at 450, 485? Yep. And what they sell for. If you went back 278, I mean, you can go further. You don't have to be that tight with the square footage 10% plus or minus, because the relative analysis, exactly what Nigel just asked me for, that relative analysis. Did you do one of those yet? Okay. And what did that say the property was worth? Because that if those basements are finished at a legal, they were done legally, then the city knows about that square footage. And so it would be assessed appropriately. If they don't, that's a whole other analysis challenge, right? That they're illegal. Yeah, you do. What you need to do is the same thing that I gave to Nigel. You need to do a relative analysis because you're sort of winging it a little bit without doing that. And I think the relative analysis might help you. And if you want to show it to me after you do it, I'm happy to review it for you. Yep. I mean, yeah, yeah. It's a little bit of a bear when you first learn it, but it'll set you free, right? It really will give you some quantitative analysis that makes making this differential thing. Because no, I would absolutely not tell somebody to finish a basement. I just try to figure out how far could I tweak their price based on math, right? I'd start there. Yep. And that's how you compare apples to oranges versus being stuck going all the way back just to get something that sold like that. You could take all apples and compare it to your orange on a relative basis because we're going to see whether Seattle saw that they actually had, that finished, basement or not. The math will tell us a story. So go do one of those sooner than later. Reach out to me. Let's review it. Yeah. Good. Yeah. And it's a good excuse to push yourself to learn that skill set, right? Because you walk in, Matt, if you walk in with math and a net sheet, you're just the only one doing that. And it puts you in a much greater sense of, value control. Do you know what they think it's worth, by the way? Yeah. Okay. That's what I was figuring. They're probably thinking it's not, not as good as a finished basement, but not 485. And I think the math might tell you that. I think the math might tell you at least six. So, yeah, do one of those. Let's see what it says, and we'll go from there. And it'll prove the point one way or the other. And if it doesn't, we'll try to find out where the anomaly is. Good. Awesome. Yeah. 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 Well, that one will change your life, though. I mean, that's like that. That'll change your life. I mean, if you're asking me as a doer of the thing, like I will not walk into a house without the math. No chance. So, okay. You're welcome. All right. What else do we have here? Anything else? Okay. Hearing none, I will see you guys all the rest of the week. All right. Peace out. You're welcome. Bye. Have a good night. Okay. Stats is too easy. Laura, I am circling back on a message from Peggy that I forwarded today about any feedback from the agent today. Please let me know where that stands. And if they are going to show it, could they come to the open house while I'm there? What did you say? Stats is too easy. You might just fuck something up. All right, let's go. Hold on. Wait, let me call you back in 2 seconds.
You know, you can just smell your balls.
Mm-hmm.
They just fucking reek. Kind of like it. Nothing like trying to explain what you're doing to a Midwest kid at a bank that has no clue.
Who?
Fucking Ben Polumsky. It's like what he thinks is like a teller at a bank.
Yeah, so tell them that's what it is.
I fucking love the kid. He's a great dude. That kid, there's not many people that are wishing the best for you in your life other than your family. And he is one of those kids. Fucking great dude. You've got Martin. Oh, it's so cold. My ball hair shrivels up. I like you. That's why you're my friend. Sad.
Laura, also reach out to the guy that needed,
Mhm.
that was interested in our other property in Truro.
It is cold, yes, for sure. Are you staying here longer or are you leaving?